Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I was looking forward to this event to meet you, the pivorak community. I've heard a lot about you. So it's great to be here in person and stand in front of you. So today I would like to talk about how we can grow as engineers, how we can look at our problems also from the user perspective and from the product perspective. And it was supposed to be about cross-functional teams, but then I realized that it's not only about those teams, it's also about any team that is working on product. So who know what that is, please raise your hand. Yeah, most of you. Who of you like to play with it as a kid? Yeah, me too. We like to build things. And before we go further, let me give you an idea of what we built. So we build at Railsware, we build products for external clients as well as for ourselves. And on external projects, we perform a wide range of functions. So we start with engineering and design, but we also do product management. And when it comes to our own products, we use the same knowledge and approaches that we have acquired over the past 11 years to build things that we need and also the things that we believe others will need. My focus is primarily in the labs, so I work on one of our own products. That's how I can get the full experience, both from the code side and from the product side. And we don't do what client wants, we do what they need. So that's something that sets us apart from the outsourcing companies. And 5 years ago, I was happy like that. I joined a new interesting project that was Smart Team. It was first international team that I was working with. There was nice client. It could not have been better, really. I was creative and inventive. We had to face challenges like sun during the summer, and we were given freedom of choice. We could pick whatever the technology stack that we wanted, and we were delivering new features, and we were moving ahead. We were moving forward, and after 8 months, it was over. Client ran out of money, and nobody wanted to use what we built. So what we ended up having is an eroding repository on GitHub. That's the only thing that's left from that very nice and interesting project. Because, well, nobody wanted that. We had to shut it down. We had to wind down the entire AWS infrastructure. And eventually, code died with the product. So the main takeaway is that we tend to build the wrong thing. And the wrong things do not withstand the test of time. So how many of products you've worked on are still helping people? Well, I did the math, and in my case, almost half of my professional work is gone. It no longer helps people. So if my current project fails, then this number will go way higher, and I wouldn't like to see that. To put that in perspective, I could make another bachelor's degree in the time that I spent working on products that are actually serving nobody anymore. And the point is that a lot of companies fail. There are different studies. Some say that 4 out of 5 startups fail within first 18 months. Others say that 50% companies fail within first 5 years. And another one that 70% do not survive or do not reach 10th year. So a lot of companies fail. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, you know, okay. So this is a DVD rental company from US, and it was quite successful. It was founded in 1985. In 2004, it has more than 9,000 stores across US. And Netflix, that's what killed Blockbuster, really. And I will tell you a bit about it. So imagine this. Nice evening, you have planned it out, you want to watch a movie, and then what? Then you need to drive to Blockbuster store. And then you browse through shelves. There is no Command F, you have to browse it yourself. Then you're happy that you have found it, you bring it home just to realize that it's a French version. And if you are happy enough that didn't happen, you have the right movie, then you watch it, then you have to give it back. So you drive again to Blockbuster, and if you do not return it on time, then the high fee will apply. And that's actually how they made money. They were making most of their money, like 90%, I guess, on those fees. And then Netflix came along. It was started in 1997. And shortly after, it offered first DVD rental and sales service. So it was website. The DVDs were delivered by mail, so people didn't have to come to the store anymore. They could just have a subscription that was introduced shortly afterwards. And they had recommendation system 18 years ago. First recommendation system 18 years ago. 2004, Blockbuster, 9,000 stores, Netflix, 5 million users. Actually, Blockbuster evaluated the idea that Netflix brought to the table, and they thought, well, nobody will want that. Well, they were terribly wrong. In 2007, Netflix introduced streaming, and the rest is known as history. So right now, Blockbuster is no longer an operational company. There are 6 franchise-based stores. 5 of them, Australia, where Netflix doesn't have much content yet. And reason number 1 why it happens is that there is no market need, so nobody wants to use that. For Blockbuster, not anymore. But there are cases where there is no market need yet. Do you think that Facebook was the first social media? Most likely not, and it wasn't. But it came in the time that when things were possible. Like there were social networks before, but they were in times of DSL networks, and it was really tricky to work with images back then. It was mostly for text pages, like in links, for example. But when the infrastructure got better, Facebook could come along. So Facebook leveraged that better internet. And the same goes for Netflix. Going online means going global. So there was no more need to buy all those DVDs, all those copies. They could just have one copy and upload it to servers and stream across the globe. So people use products that make their lives better. And how about you? Why do you prefer one app over another when it comes to messaging? I don't think it's about code, is it? Well, if we don't think it's about code, why do we expect others to care about code? So code is just one facet of building products. And product success depends on solving real user problems. Users will not care if it's a perfect, clean code. They have their problems and they want them to be addressed. And that's what they pay for. They pay for the value that products delivers to them. So we can focus on that. And actually solving problems of users will increase the money flow. So increasing the value that product brings to the people can increase the money flow that comes to the company, and therefore our salaries can be increased because eventually we are the ones who create that value. So let's talk about shipping. And now let's test the internet. Oh, sorry. I wanted to show you a short video. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. This is a time lapse recorded on a container ship. So those ships like go across ocean. They bring goods like cars from Japan to Europe and US. Can you see it, by the way? Or okay, cool. Okay, moving on. So it's spectacular, isn't it? This tropical storm, I find it really, really nice. And maybe it's because we spend most time on land. So imagine this trip from Santiago, Chile to Taipei on Taiwan. It takes 4 weeks. That's how long it takes to cross this ocean. So imagine that's all you've got. You've got containers, some water, sky, and the clouds. 4 weeks. No phone, no internet connection. And you're not able to stay in touch with your family and friends. So chat on Messenger or Skype with beloved one would mean a whole lot to those people. And actually that map that I showed you comes from a product that brings distant people, distant families together. It provides satellite internet and LTE to ships whenever it's possible. And for almost 50 years, guys behind it were doing that. They are called KVH, and they've been enabling people to stay connected via satellites. And that was, imagine, long before the internet was a thing, really, really long time ago. And what a shame that job descriptions aren't written that way. Because products are built for people, by people. And improving people's lives makes us feel powerful. I guess that all of you remind the first moment when you started to tinker with code and it actually worked. I had that amazing feeling of feeling powerful. And this is the same thing. It brings back connection to the world, and it makes businesses stay relevant for many years to come because they are not tied to a specific technology or product. So let's talk about planning meetings. We all love them, right? Well, for some people, it's part of their day job. So let's imagine that you are a sales representative. All you do is to have, your main goal is to have meetings with as many people as you can to sell whatever you're selling. And usually scheduling meetings over email is hell because you offer some time and then you cannot really offer that same time to two people because then you might face overbooking. So this is a bit of a tricky issue which leads to the so-called email ping pong. And 5 years ago, Tobe, the guy behind this product, came to us with an idea to book directly into the calendar. So whoever comes first, goes first. And imagine that he wanted to integrate all the calendars day one. So Google Calendar, Microsoft Outlook, or Apple Calendar. He wanted all of them at once. And we talked him out of this idea because we saw that Google has potential. It's what companies use because it's, well, low cost really. There is no much things that you have to configure yourself. It's a SaaS product. And it had big potential. So we picked it, we integrated it first. It helped us focus on one thing rather than be scattered all over the place for many other integrations. And it actually let Tope go to market, validate this, improve the product, and then introduce all the remaining integrations. And now Calendly has 5 million users. So main takeaway here is that not problems are equally pressing. And let's see what's important, not what's just urgent. So people tend to over-focus on addressing things that are urgent, not thinking much about things that are important. So if you think only about urgent things, those are the short terms, then you don't prepare for what's coming, so what's important in the long run. And well, we're especially prone to that, right? We pick a story, we jump right into code. Well, we can instead ensure we're building the right thing, and we can do it asking a few simple questions. This is one of them. What user problem does the story help to solve? Or is it what user needs? Let's start with those two simple questions. Let's think about users for a second. And picking user at the center actually helps to pick highest user value problems and address them because, well, you see what's important, not only what's urgent. So you can focus both on things that are urgent as well as things that are important. And in the long run, that's a winning strategy. So finding the right problems is the first step. Second is how we solve them. So do you find it difficult to keep entire problem or solution for a story in your head? Well, I find it very difficult. And I used to run in circles like this poor guy. I remember this feeling of anxiety when I don't know what I should be doing next. Feeling of passing time and lack of progress. You might find it familiar. And why it doesn't work? Well, because brain keeps recreating the parts. So we have partial information, then we try to figure way forward. Something changed, I guess. And you cannot really explore you can explore neither the problem space nor the solution space because details keep sweeping away. So you keep recreating them, and you cannot, without proper understanding, you cannot really explore the space or provide many solution directions or variations. So you stick to one solution that came to your mind, and then you lose chances of looking into others. And then you cannot really make informed decisions which way to proceed because you can see only the one way. But what if I tell you how to overcome it? Well, there is an approach that helped me many, many times. It's super simple, it's universal, it's simpler than React even, and it feels like superpower. It's the scaffold that will help your brain reach the sky, pun intended. It's made of two components. So it will be a bit about writing. So the one component is issue, the other one is idea. It's simple as that. In the premium pack, you get benefits and risks. And this is called implant, short from implementation plan, but it can be actually applied to anything. And this is how it might look like. So this is one of the stories that we had. We were showing tickets from Jira in our application directly, and we had some issues that it was just slow and seemed unresponsive. And then I started to map out what is the issue, what are the ideas, what issues are for each idea, and to give you a better understanding. So each idea can have its own issues. Each of them might have their own ideas, how to solve them. So the main idea is to actually go as deeply as needed to understand different ways of solving this problem. So it lets you capture your ideas and move into one direction deeply, see the variations, or go back and see other directions. So this is one simple example which has ideas, benefits, and also risks. And you can do it for anything. You can do it for like implementation plan on a story level. You can do it for discovering the problems that you should be solving. Or you can do it for your personal life. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? What are the issues, benefits, and risks? And it helps to show the gaps and actually handle what we call uncertainty. So when you start doing a story, right, writing some code or figuring out what you'll be doing, then you can like start writing code right away, or you can try to come up with the plan, and then you will immediately see what are the problems, like what are the gaps that need refinement, what you need to ask, what are the questions that you need to ask to get more information so that you can proceed further. So it actually captures the thoughts so that brain can move deeper. And it also gives you a sense of moving forward, so there's no anxiety that you're not moving forward. And then you can explore short-term solutions, mid-term solutions, long-term solutions, and then you can actually understand efforts that are needed and go back to your manager and give him all those informations so that he or you can make the decision what is optimal to be done, like in terms of effort, time needed to be spent on it, or how this will affect the code base. Will it introduce more tech debt or not? So why it works? It's quote for a friend of mine from Railsware. He said, "I would like to know about user as much as I can, as it helps to set priorities that impact my decision." And the thing is that if you don't know where the product is heading, you're more likely to introduce tech debt and not really address user problems. So it's a bit like what we do in code. We split responsibilities. And in this case, it's explore, analyze, understand first, then you plan your next steps, and then you execute them. Simple. Responsibilities are splitted. So if we do it for code, we can do it for ourselves as well. So 3 years ago, I was working as Android developer, and as you might know, there are many screen resolutions and screen densities. So what you need to build an app, you need each image in at least 4 different sizes. I guess it's 5 now. And I was usually given graphics for iOS. Who could imagine? Platforms differ, right? Well, for those designers that I've worked with, they didn't. So we had some issues like wrong dimensions, even as for iOS. We didn't have consistency between screens. Those are the problems that we face while working with designers. And pixel perfect images are not really representable or on Android. They were thinking iOS. And at first we started to ask them to give us sliced images so we can just use online tools, rescale them, and apply to our projects. And thankfully there were tools for that. It took us a year to convince them to use Sketch. And we used the argument that, hey guys, we'll prepare a template for them and you can like reuse it for later applications. And that actually worked. Designs were still for iOS, but we could write a plugin that allowed us to deal with those cross-platform differences like different naming conventions or different sizes. It was much, much easier. And then we started to export to Zeppelin. And we could import directly to IDEs. So there was very little hassle. And we could say it's not our job. And we could keep complaining about it, or we could change the job. But it wouldn't move the organization anywhere further. And it would also prevent those people from growing and learning. And it would, to some extent, also prevent us from growing. So we either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work is actually the same. So this is one of the problems of the so-called silo approach, where each function is separated. So front-end works separately, back-end works separately, designers work separately, each function is separate. There are many other issues with that. I will not dive into that, except for showing you this famous image. I guess that you all know it, right? So it's a bit like when you run tests, you write unit tests, everything works in separation, and then you run feature spec, well, it's red. So look for understanding. And you might be thinking, well, it's not my job, is it? And why do you think so? Is it because you are a software engineer, you have that role, and you are not an UX designer, or you're not a mobile designer? Well, or maybe you're not good at it, you think? Roles are just labels. They work pretty much as modules in code. So they help us understand what might be the set of functions that we'll be doing in the next company when we change as software engineers. But actually, in each company is slightly different. For us, it means to implement solution, engineer a solution, architect app, lead engineering, and also provide flexible engineering. But it might be different for each company. And quote from a friend of mine, he said that in real projects, even in large organizations, it's really difficult to limit oneself to own specialty. And I guess that it's really, really true. So we can think about product teams for a second. So there are three main parts as I see it. There is engineering, meaning us. We can be asked questions about the feasibility. So what are the efforts that we need to build it, and can we really build it? Then design can be asked, okay, will users like it? And product management will have to answer the question about the viability. So will that actually help the business? And since we are specializing more and more, right? There are people who specialize in certain frameworks, there are people who specialize in certain tech stacks. But we need more people to actually work as those translators who can close the gaps between different functions and different specialties. For example, between designers and engineers, I've learned a new term last week. It's called UX engineer. Have you ever heard of it? Well, I haven't, but apparently it's a person who works between designers and engineers. Front and back end engineers. Have you ever heard the term middleware engineer? Well, I haven't. Okay, some did. And in case of product people and tech people, there is a role called product engineer. Well, some use that term to describe people who whose job is to make sure that the production line for hardware works well, but we use that term in software engineering to some extent as well. So product engineer actually closes the gap between product people and tech people. But you might say, okay, but isn't it about doing someone else's job? Should someone else do it? Well, it's not about doing someone else's job. It's about making things work and moving forward as a team, because we all work with different people. So look for the right balance and strive for better communication. And when it comes to communication, I have a story about that too. So in 70s, Dr. Ernesto Ciroli from Italian NGO was working in Zambia to bring agriculture there. And he started to grow tomatoes in a fertile river, valley of a river Zambezi. And it was perfect. It grew beautifully. And then they had those magnificent tomatoes, and they started to wonder, well, why there is no agriculture in Zambia? And when the tomatoes were nice and ripe and ready to be like harvested, overnight came 200 hippos out of the river, then ate everything, and the Zambians, the Dr. Ciroli said to the Zambians, the hippos, oh my God, the hippos. And they said, yes, that's why we don't have agriculture here. And he was like, why didn't you tell us? Well, you never asked. So that's the thing. Poor communication leads to frustration, missed chances, and worse outcomes. So please strive to communicate proactively, ask questions, seek understanding of the other side. It's the same thing with tech debt. Nobody will care about it unless we care about it. Nobody will know about it unless we tell them. So it's our job to communicate about it. And the only thing they can notice is our productivity decline. And then they will come with questions. What's going on? Why does it take twice as long as before? And well, it's mostly about tech debt. So making tech debt visible is one way how we can contribute to the product, but there are actually many more ways. And a lot of happens every day. Like market needs change, user expectations change, tech frameworks change, especially in JavaScript. Things change quickly. You might discover a new thing while going to work, or customer might share feedback about something that he likes or he doesn't like, or stakeholders might figure out a new business model. So how to manage all of that incoming information? There's plenty of them. How can we collect ideas? We as engineers have great ideas, but unshared ideas will not help to make the world a better place. So how can we deal with that? From the product perspective, there are really three groups of people involved in the information providing, like information sourcing. So we've got customer feedback, we've got product team, meaning us, among other people, and stakeholders. And what we did is that we have created a single place where we put all of those information. So we gather in the single place. So everything comes to the single project in Jira. So in case of customer feedback, it's Drift. We gather through Drift. We can gather it through user voice, intercom, whatever. It can be from your customer support team. It should go to the same place where we have ideas, issues, like tech debt tickets and so on, shared by the product team, so us. And stakeholders can contribute to that too. So how it helps? So it helps in this sense that we have single source of information. And that's really crucial. I guess that some of you might have worked in a place that you had some information here, some information there. You had to really navigate between them. If you have single tool, then or single place, that's not a problem, but it will grow, and it will grow quite rapidly. So what I recommend is to divide it into contexts. And actually, those contexts can be structured as a tree. So in my case, my product that I'm working on is, I don't know, somewhere around 60 contexts. So it has been split into 16 buckets. So we can talk about tech debt separately, and then we can talk about, I don't know, user profiles, for example, separately. So that helps establish better communication. And we can bring it to the organization level. Yes? Yes, of course. Okay. So if you, okay, I guess that you use Google Maps, right? You know Google Maps. I'll use that as an example. So in case of Google Maps, you can distinguish certain feature components. Let's say you have a map. Map has layers. You've got satellite, terrain, 3D. You also have zoom. So with zoom happens different things. Right now it also switches to street view. So we can have street view as another context. And then map wouldn't make sense without places. So we can have places in another context. And then this context can be divided into, like, I don't know, your places maybe, like home, work, and your lists. Places that you've been to, your favorite places, your places that you would like to go to. And those places can be further refined. Like we have points of interest, which then can, like when gathered, they will form areas of interest. And those points of interest, for example, can be further refined into like practical information, like opening hours, like, I don't know, reviews, for example, pictures from users, or how much time you're likely to spend there. So that kind of things. Does it make sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, so in my case, there is 61 of those. So it's pretty structured. And how we put them in those buckets, We have another tool, but you can use any tool. So in our setup, it works through components in Jira project. Do you work with Jira, by the way? Okay, I see heads nodding, cool. So we use single Jira project, and then when a ticket is to be added, we simply pick the right component. And then it will end up in the proper bucket. And if it, for example, in my case, if it ends up in context #1, which is top level for my product, then I will groom those tickets as a responsible person for that, and then I will move it to the proper buckets, so the most specific buckets. And this way we can separate those informations, and then I can, for example, focus only, going back to the Google Maps example, only on the practical information for places, points of interest. Okay? Yeah, so we have two projects, and the thing that I was referring to is input, when we collected all the information there and groomed them, and then we formed the problem space, then we start talking about the solution space. And then when we figure out what we'll be building, then we move to the roadmap, and then we move the tickets to the roadmap. And we spent 3 years on this approach, and then we created, within that period of time, we created almost 5,000 tickets. And when it comes to contexts, we have more than 800, so quite a lot of them. So why it works and what it does. So it stimulates contributions. So anyone can contribute to anything, disregarding the role you play in the company. So for example, I go to work and I have an idea that I've heard DHH wrote an article about those library rules in Basecamp. And I find it, I don't know, I find it nice, I find it useful to have some dedicated time to focus on work. So I can create an input item, add it to culture or workspace, and then someone responsible for that will take care of that input. So it works as a collective knowledge. It also works as a means of collective leadership. So we all become leaders in this sense that we contribute to those changes. And to sum up, we like to build things. And we like to build things right. So let's build the right things. On average, every one of us has roughly 80,000 hours in our careers. Well, I've got only 63,000 left. So let's use that. Let's use that time wisely and build the things that will make people's lives better. Thank you. Questions?
Questions? Okay, 2 questions. I'm running.
Do you have any mistake you're proud for?
That's a very good question. Do I have any mistake that I'm proud of? Sorry, let me think. I haven't really thought about that, to be honest, because I rather, when I see that something doesn't work, I try to make something good out of this failure. So what is failure? Failure is when the metric or the objective that you set for something is not met, right? But real failure, as I see it, is when you don't draw conclusions and you haven't learned anything from it. So I don't know. Any mistake that I'm proud of? Well, one thing regarding the first story that I shared about the product 5 years ago. My mistake and my company's mistake was that we haven't helped the client doing the market research. So that was the mistake, but I'm not particularly proud of it. So
Thanks. We have the first hand.
Hello, thank you for your presentation, first of all. And there are kind of questions. So have you heard about lean methodology and who is solution architect? And if you know, what do you think about those amount of failures during startups because they are not including solution architects? They are not cheap, but everything that you describe is actually a base things for solution architects. They are working with this.
I disagree with the last statement, to be honest, because Well, it depends. When you refer to solution architect, you mean the person who like works with software, like focuses on code, or that focuses on product and code? Okay. Okay, I would, for such person, I would use role product manager. Or what is the, like, I don't really get the difference. Mhm. Okay, so from that perspective, such role makes a lot of sense, and most likely that would help. But the problem with like young companies, startups especially, is that they do not market research. I was recently in this week on a product conference specifically, and one of the guys said that 80% of product managers do not do market research. So architecting solution shall include like having the data, right, that you rely on. And market research, as I see it, is vital in that process. Because how can you know if something will work or not if you don't know if there is enough market for it, if there is enough market need for that? So it's hard to tell if it makes sense to include solution architects from the beginning, but it's definitely worth making research if it will.
Guys, maybe you will have the discussion
yeah, we can
afterwards,
continue
because
the
we have the
discussion
last
afterwards,
question
yeah.
over here. I want to.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Basically, I have two short questions. First question is about how you organize work of the product teams. When you have bigger product, for example, do you have different set of features? Do you organize them as one like set of the product owners or product managers who working with several functional team or cross-functional team, or you organize them as several product teams who are working on subset of the features on specific, I don't know, feature set, and how you connect them to some product metrics like revenue, ROI, and so on, LTV.
Okay, so in our case, we have one product manager per product. So that is the responsible person in our setup. And we have like a group of product managers at Railsware. And when it comes to own products, for example, then they have to discuss internally what makes sense to be built. So I'm not involved in those talks yet. I hope I will be. So I cannot like give you the specifics, but I know that there is plenty of different metrics that we measure for each product. I guess, does it answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's give a round of applause to Artur.
Thank you.
Personally, I had counted my hours. I don't know how many thousands left, but I would like to spend them wisely, as you recommend me. Thanks.
Perfect.
And we have a present for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. Thank you. I have one last little favor to ask you. If you did like it or didn't like it, please help me improve this presentation by going to my website and clicking the button Leave Feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you.